The question of what do we allow and disallow for our kids is the wrong question.
I think what the rejection is definitive statements like that's bad or something's wrong. And the nature is I want to fight against that.
You cannot preserve trust and be an adversary. There's always another way.
At some point, does Aaron just say no? Would Aaron let his 14-year-old get a face tattoo?
I ran out of options. I don't know what I would do, but...
I wanted to begin with kind of an open check-in on your heart, your spirit, your soul, as it relates to how we landed here. By the way, was a couple of our guys were talking about your interview with Tim Ferriss and Naval, and they were sharing, hey, what they agreed with, what they disagreed with, and then our podcast producer Jamie reached out, and I'm so honored that you said yes for this conversation. So I'm coming in excited because I understand some of your viewpoints and your thoughts. I think they're rich. I think they're a little bit edgy, and I want to chat. But what I wanted to ask is, man, after that big platform and a really what could be triggering conversation, dude, how's your inbox doing? How's your X account? How are you getting letters in the mail? Is it any more letters than normal? What's going on?
Oh, my X blew up. It's been overwhelmingly positive, and it's been I got a little scared. I wasn't really scared until after that conversation that I realized, like, wow, I'm kind of bearing a lot of personal stuff and exposing myself to judgment. And I was worried my wife was going to be upset about blowback. She's very not online. So, but it's been very, very positive, like 99.9%. And I've enjoyed, the people that have been ripping me on the Amazon reviews have been, has been fun, and, expect that. And I think it's interesting. Some books are written to kind of make a point, and lots of people agree. And this book was written in order to challenge, and if a lot of people didn't think this was crazy, then a book like this would not be necessary or interesting. So no, I embrace the controversy. Almost all of it has been, I would say all of it has been in good faith and welcomed, and it's been a ton of fun. And I've had a lot of positive feedback from people saying this had a big impact on how they interact with their kids, and that is the most gratifying thing that there could be. And so, I mean, if there was just, one or two people like that, that would be enough. And there's been much more than that. And almost nobody has told me some sort of horror story that I've perpetrated on them. So it's been really terrific.
Somebody who doesn't know your work yet, they say, hey, I heard you were on Tim's show. You had a 3-hour conversation. What point were you trying to make? How would you answer that?
The point that I'm trying to make is that kids are full status people. And there's a philosophical argument for this, and it's a real grounded, deep philosophical argument that comes from a real tradition of philosophy, not just somebody, blogging online. And if kids are full status people, then we should be treating them very differently than we conventionally do. And that basically means figuring out ways to enable them to be the authors of their own lives and make their own choices, and spare them the indignities of the various types of rule enforcement that we typically apply to kids that we would never apply to other adults in our lives. To really see that disparity or the distinction or the double standard, and to and the fun part is that it's a creative endeavor to keep a kid safe, to onboard them to the realities of the world, but also to avoid reflexing to invoking rules and various attempts of control.
What is full status as you define it?
Yeah, full status. The way that you treat, friends and family, right? You if you want them to behave differently, you don't impose restrictions. You don't impose expectations. You don't say to your wife, I don't like the way that you eat. You eat too much cheese. And so I'm going to limit how much cheese you have. You spend too much time on your phone. I'm going to limit, right? It's assuming that I have the right to make decisions for you. And that's this is a lesson that humanity has been learning over the ages. We learned that, women are full status people, that men should not be making decisions for women. We've learned that different minorities are full status people. They get all of the rights of, that we afford to everyone else. And disabled persons, right? You can go through all the characteristics that kids have. They're smaller, they are ignorant, or they have less knowledge. They are unskilled. They are dependent. And you could look at those features among adults in life, right? The disabled have some of those qualities. People of various amounts of background knowledge, people with various amounts of money, variously skilled. We never would say to an adult who has one of those features that you don't qualify as a full person and someone needs to make decisions for you. And so the same attitude, the same stance applies to kids, or should apply to kids.
Yeah. Where is the nuance, though, of the undeveloped brain argument?
Yeah, that's one argument that I refute in the book, or really try to refute. That's one of the main arguments. The brain is underdeveloped. There's a couple parts to this. One is that the brain is developing, right? And so that is your special obligation to your kid. We have special obligations to other people in our lives. I would say I have obligations to my spouse. I have obligations to my brother. I have obligations to his kids. They're different, right? My obligations to my brother and to my spouse and my friends they're all different. And we know, what these distinctions are. And we have unique obligations to our kids. And one of those unique obligations is that their brains are developing, that they depend on us during that period. But the brain development, there's no point along the period of development of the brain where someone can make the argument, or I've ever heard a successful argument, that past this point, a person is fully a person. Right? Yeah. We think of certain ages, age 18, age 21, age 25, right? The standard argument among psychologists is that the frontal lobes are not fully developed until like the early 20s. And I mean, meanwhile, people go off to war younger than that. So that argument is weak, right? It begs the question, or raises the question, when does brain development confer personhood? My philosophical argument, or again, it's not mine, and I should say this is I'm deriving my ideas from the school of thinking or school of parenting called Taking Children Seriously, which was developed by physicist and philosopher David Deutsch and Sarah Fitzclarridge back in the 90s, and based on the work of philosopher Karl Popper. So their idea of personhood is an entity that is capable of explaining the world, of creativity, of knowledge growth and knowledge generation. And a baby has that capacity, because a baby can begin to learn language. It's thought that babies start learning pretty much day one.
Or in the womb.
In the womb. And the way that the human brain learns is unique among all of the brains in the animal kingdom. And the thing that's unique about humans, and this is the unique driver of personhood, is this creativity element. This idea that what we do when we learn is we make guesses about how the world works. When we learn language, we make guesses in our minds about how certain words work in communication, and then we check that out. We babble and blah 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 to our mommy and daddies, and then some of those words are working, and we build on that, and that's how we create knowledge across the board, starting in infancy on through adulthood. And so that is basically the defining characteristic of personhood, and that is the thing that as a parent you are kind of stewarding. You're stewarding this creative entity and you want that creativity to grow and to flourish, and you want to be very careful not to impose barriers and limitations on it. And that's what conventional rules are for kids, are blocks to their creativity, blocks to their understanding. And so as you're saying development, you want to nourish development. You don't want to block it. And so rules always block development, or at least they always block creativity and knowledge growth.
What do you think about the Jocko phrase, like discipline equals freedom?
Oh boy.
That and the idea of containment and the studies of, like, when I have less choice, I'm happier.
Yes. So this is a very nuanced thing, and this is what I'm constantly trying to correct. And I address this in the book, and this is a nuanced argument. But I'm not saying rules are bad. I'm not saying structure is bad. I'm saying rules as they are conventionally applied to kids is bad. So, one form of structure
right there, by the way, I think is so important. I just wanted to put an exclamation point on that, because I think that is the nuance of this conversation, as I've really, really thought about it, is what you just said. That is how we interpret, which is why it's so important to define the rule and to use oftentimes examples, because then I think we really start to understand, and we probably find ourselves more aligned than different. But if we're quick to judge what a rule is without defining it, or quick to apply it across every scenario, we miss the mark. But what I've always appreciated in listening to you about this is that if it creates dialogue and consciousness and awareness amongst parents, that to me is the big idea here. It's to get you to be a thinker and not just do the thing you always thought you should do, but actually process and be curious as a parent and reconsider what the impact is of our influence on these young ones.
Absolutely. So I'll get to the question. The Jocko Willink question is, I would say, a question about constraints. And so I'll reach the question of what I think about constraints by first starting with this rules. How are rules for kids different than rules for adults? And ultimately, I would say that I'm actually the biggest fan. I'm such a fan of rules and structure and norms that I don't want to spoil them for my kids by forcing them to accept rules and norms that they don't really understand, which gives them a reason to say, to get bitter about this, to rebel against this, and to have to have this backfire. So the way that we, rules for adults, like the rules of baseball, the rules of chess, the rules of the road, adults can opt out of rules. In the worst case scenario, you can go home, right? You don't have to abide by the rules of the road. You could decide to walk, or just not use the road. And
you're not like most men. You don't just scroll, you study. You don't just parent, you lead. And you don't just read, you implement. And that's why we made this, a no-fluff, battle-tested list of books that sharpen men like you. Picked by our tribe, proven in real life, these books are going to stretch your mind, fuel your growth, and challenge who you thought you had to be. These aren't just great reads. They're tools to help you grow as a father, husband, and a man. Get the list and all the insights that bring it to life at frontrowdads.com/books.
Pretty much at any time, you can just go home and close the door, and you are the king of your castle, and you can close yourself off to everybody else's rules. But kids are not in that situation, right? If kids have to brush their teeth, someone's going to hunt them down. There's nowhere they can go and close the door and be free of this teeth brushing rule. Someone was going to come find them and make them brush their teeth. And that's the same way for, tons of rules that kids face. And so that's what I'm objecting to, this compulsory, forced set of rules that they cannot opt out of. I love, right? There are lots of great rules and great norms and great structures in the world. And I think this is what Jocko is getting at. These constraints actually make your life better. One way of visualizing this is the constraints of aerodynamics, right? The Wright brothers discovered the limitations of what an object needs to be able to do in order to fly, right? Lots of people are trying to develop airplanes, and the Wright brothers found what are the limitations that if we adhere to these limitations, then we can fly. And that expands your range of capabilities. By discovering the constraints of aerodynamics, you can now fly. And that's across the board. That would be basically all of our knowledge. Our knowledge is the set of constraints that once you accept these, you actually increase your potential.
And you're arguing for letting them find their own constraint versus you issuing it to them.
Well, exactly, because whenever you issue it, right, if you force it, it means that they don't understand it, right? That's the reason we force it. We force it because they don't understand why brushing your teeth is important. So I'm going to force you to brush your teeth. But when you force somebody, not only is it proof that they don't understand the value of this, it also introduces all of these corruptions of your own very goal, right? Your goal is that they brush their teeth for the same reason you do, right? So if you want to get them to that point, introducing yourself as an adversary who forces things is, getting off on the wrong foot immediately, right? It gives them a reason to go ahead.
10 years ago, did you ever imagine you'd talk about teeth brushing? Teeth brushing.
Yeah, teeth brushing is such a great.
I just imagine 10 years ago, script your life in 2025. Right. How much are you talking about teeth? Oh my God, that's funny, man. That's really funny.
Yeah, teeth brushing.
I got a quick question for you about this forcing, because I have this memory of my now 15-year-old when he was probably about 7, didn't want to go play basketball. We were in the parking lot and I'm like, you're going in. I basically forced him to go play basketball. He was crying. He went against his will. I forced him to go to the gym. And then he had the greatest time. And he comes out and he's like, thank you so much for, I don't even want to tell you, thank you for making me go, because then you'll make me do other things I don't want to do. But
Right. So this is such a great example. That it is one of the hardest challenges. And the kid's going to love this. And the question is there any other way to do that besides forcing him?
Right.
Right. And the thing that we know philosophically is the answer to that question is yes. There are infinite ways to make something appealing on somebody else's on their own terms. Mm-hmm. My example is skiing. I love skiing. I want nothing more for my family to do skiing, to be a skiing family, to do the whole thing, to go to the lodge for the weekend and ski, and that is my personal nirvana. Mm. And so my approach to this is to make damn sure that I don't give my kids a reason to be bitter and not want to go skiing and have to force them and have it be a battle and then have them decide that this is how they're going to take their stand against dad, is to dig their heels in and be miserable and hate skiing. That would be a nightmare. I don't want that nightmare so much that I'm going to take my sweet time in introducing them to skiing and do everything I can. And then this is the creativity, right? There's not much creativity in dragging your kid to the basketball gym. That is, and I would say, not to offend anybody, I think that's selling our kids short, right? A lot of times the very argument is, I want what's best for you so much that I am going to do the hard work of forcing you into the car and dragging. It hurts me more than it hurts you. And I'm going to drag you to the gym and you're going to play basketball. And I'm going to damage our relationship a little bit and make you a little nervous about, when I come around next time, because I just care for you so much. I think that is selling both the kid and ourselves short. And the point of this book is that, is there another way? There's always another way. There is always another way to achieve the end that you're looking for in a way that is relationship building, that is fun, that is,
how would you do it with skiing? What's the other way with skiing versus put on your damn skis and put a smile on that face?
Right. Well, what's fun at the ski hill, right? So we went tubing to get the idea of being at the mountain. And you get in the tube, and do you like tubing? And if you don't like tubing, I always have a way to opt out. So we go, there's two of me and my wife. One of us is available to take a kid to the lodge, and I'm a big fan of iPads, and you can have some hot cocoa and French fries and watch the iPad in the lodge, right? That's fun. And hey, dad's out tubing. You want to come ride the tube? It's like, oh, great. But I've never forced them to do a thing in their lives. They have no reason to be trepidatious, and they want to see what I'm into. I am this fun guy. I rented them the equipment. We went over to the baby hill. There's a little magic carpet thing. I'm with them. I'm like on top of everything. I'm looking for every single way that this could go wrong. They're cold. It's too windy. Their equipment doesn't fit, right? It's like keying in on everything going on. Also being very attentive to what do they like? What are they liking about this? What's enjoyable? How do I amp that up? It's basically, how can I be the most fun person?
Could someone argue that that's like another form of coercion and manipulation? And like, hey man, you might not be telling your kids just get on your damn skis and go, which a person could argue that's more forward, that's more transparent than, hey, I'm going to try to I know my intention is for you to put on skis, but I'm going to bait you with an iPad and chocolate. And then I'm going to put you in the proximity of the thing. And then eventually I'm going to play a little song that's got the words skiing is fun in the background.
So it is a subtle distinction at times. The way I think about it is, let's say you had a friend that you wanted to introduce to skiing, right? Where they say, "Oh, you're manipulating me to try to get me to ski. You just want to ski," right? It's like, well, I'm persuading you that skiing is fun. Right. There are duplicitous ways of doing that.
Sure.
And when we're highly attuned to when our friends are doing that to us.
Yeah.
And it's a conversation. Right. And so if we have a good trusting relationship, I can be honest about, my kids all know that I really want them to go to like skiing, that I love skiing.
Yeah.
They get the game. I mean, I tell them,
right. So that's important. The transparency, I know the intention, the energy behind it. I remember years ago, I was probably like in my early 20s and deep into I found Tony Robbins CDs, and I was like telling my friends about him, and people were like, that's just brainwashing and manipulation. And I'm like, yes, happily. Somebody wash my brain of some negative thoughts. They want to manipulate me into making more money, gladly. Right. You want to mold my brain? I'll hand it to you gladly. But a lot of it is it's intention. It's like, what is the goal? And I think that's the spirit of this. So listen, I agree with so much of what you say. And like I told you before we hit record, I was like, I want to play the opposite side of it, because in my own world, Aaron, I try to do this. Hey, what is the positive on this side? What's the positive on the other side? Let me fully understand the argument. Let me debate with myself about it. And then ultimately try to make a heart-centered, integrity-based decision that I think is best for my family and my kids.
Yeah, so I would push back against that one. There's that's two important options, right? Both sides. My kid wants to do this. I want to do this. Let's evaluate both sides honestly and critically. But there's a third option, and this is the option that gets left out. And the third option is to think up something new that satisfies both what the kid is after and what you're after.
Right.
And that is a creative, knowledge generating act. It's much more fun. And, instead of being like I'm the decider, it takes you out as the decider, and instead you are the problem solver. And, the kid doesn't want to go skiing. Why is that? And what can we do? I can buy you a new snowsuit, find you a bigger snowsuit that fits better. Right. It's the boots. It's, you're hungry. We'll go and we'll get a hot cocoa first, and then we'll go on the slopes, and right. We'll bring a friend, mommy will take you. Right. It's like, once your mind opens up to thinking up alternatives that work, then you get better and better at that. And as you get better and better at that, I don't know, it solves problems. And once you solve the problem, it's resolved, and you can use that again and again in the future. So that is a
example of drawing on the walls one time, right? You said, hey, what do we just tell them not to draw on the walls, or do we hang paper up on the walls and then let them draw on that? right? I think that was an example of yours. And I thought that was a creative solution. It's such a great visual, whether you have young kids or not, of how might you create a win scenario out of what might appear naturally to be a problem? How might it be a gift?
Yes. Well, my daughter's drawing on the walls, and the temptation is, oh, no drawing on the walls. And that's the thing. Like, anytime the reflex comes to mind that, there's no X, right? Or the reflex to impose a rule, I just short circuit that, just pause that, right? Like, she's drawing on the wall. Does she have to stop right now? Can this wait 60 seconds? And, then you can do something like sit down next to her and even draw yourself, right? And you're like with her in this moment. And then you're seeing, what is appealing to drawing on the walls, right? What's so great about this? There's a lot of things that are great. And, I have to clean the wall anyway. So, a couple more scribbles isn't really going to make any difference here. I want her to be artistic. I want her to draw. I want her to feel like she's free to, express her creativity. And me as the adult, can I think of a way that she can keep on doing this and I don't have to clean up the walls? And suddenly things start coming to mind, right? And so, you just put paper over the wall, right? We had huge rolls of paper, just like, here, I'll put the paper over the wall and you draw on that. I'll put paper over the table and set you up on the table. Now you're on the table and you're, being bold and making these big, broad strokes on a big, broad surface.
What I get the sense of is that your mission is you don't want to squash the spirit of your child. You don't. I had my now 10-year-old had a shirt when he was like 3 or 4, and it says "Don't squash my spirit." It was such a great shirt because he was so wild, and that was it. It's like, how do we? Of course, keep him safe, stop him from running into traffic, all the things. But at the same time, I never wanted to squash his spirit. Right. I my house in some ways was totally insane. They were like, my kids climb on the kitchen table, like during dinner. And it's like, I grew up in a home where it was, you sit down, do not put your elbows on the table. Right. Like, you better hold the fork with your left hand, cut with the right, then switch your fork to the right hand.
Oh, wow.
Right. Don't chew with your mouth open.
Oh, wow.
Don't overtalk anybody. Ask permission to leave the table. Like, it was about as, tight and rule driven as possible. I swung the pendulum the other way, and my Ocean, when he's 4, he's standing for dinner, like in his chair, just like he wants to eat standing up. So I probably err, honestly, Aaron, more on your side. Like, if you took a camera into my house, my kids were, homeschooled and unschooled and world schooled for a while. But we've played and we've gone back and forth with the benefits of structure and discipline, and what's the rule? Limitations on my son's phone, and then giving him a chance to see what happens if he has all the freedom, what's possible.
Nice.
I've literally played with all that, and there's so much we could talk about. But I wanted to get to this question. It was so difficult for me to figure out whether I wanted to start at the end or the beginning of your journey or your life as a kid and the influence of your dad and like all the things. But I heard this from a friend, and I don't know who to credit for this quote, but it's, we raise kids to survive our own childhood wounds.
Oh, it's great.
How much of what you're doing now and the stance you're taking is to raise kids to survive the wounds that Aaron faced as a child?
I don't think that doesn't factor into it. I think I don't know how to put it. I think there's a lot of mistake at looking at childhood and feeling like that drove how a person turns out as an adult. And one eye opener for this is a cousin of mine. His I don't want to personalize this, but I know people. The dad is really messy, and the kid grows up and is like particularly very detail oriented. And I'm pretty confident that it's a rejection of how messy
warning or
things
example.
were,
Yep.
right? But the opposite can also happen. We carry on a lot of the lifestyle or environment of our youth, right? And so it kind of refutes the concept. It's like, sometimes you can have the polar opposite reaction as an adult. You either reject what happened, the way you were treated as a kid, or you amplify it, or something in the middle. And so what people do is they interrogate, different lifestyles, whether we're conscious of this or not, and make changes and problem solve around things that we identified as problems. And I don't know, my thought is, or my kind of outlook is, that it's the reasons that matter the most, not the environment, not the context, not the rules. And certainly not the outcomes. It's not, how well my kid does in school, or how smart they are, or what their, acumen is on the soccer field or whatever. It is, what are the reasons going on inside their head? And the thing about people is that they create their own reasons. You can't force a reason into somebody's head. You can't, right? And anytime you try to do that, it could always backfire on you. They could get confused about the content of the reason that you're trying to force in there. And you always damage your relationship. Anytime someone's trying to force a reason into your mind, you're on the lookout for that person. So I think reasons are primary. Reasons are undersold, underappreciated. And kids, babies, infants, small kids, big kids will form reasons. They will form reasons about everything that goes on. Hopefully, the mistaken reasons that they form will be corrected going forward. Hopefully, mistakes in childhood don't get hardened into long-term personality defects, but they absolutely can, I think. And that's what I would say this whole perspective is that's why they call it taking children seriously. It's taking the reasons in their minds seriously, and not just writing them off as some kid who's acting out for the time being, or going through a phase, or reacting to their dad, or whatever it is. It's like, what is the reason? How can I best steward the reason producing process in my kid?
When your kids ask why, do you typically answer, or is there a part of Aaron that's just like, because I said so, I'm exhausted?
Oh my God. I say I'm busy a lot. If I'm going to defer, I say I'm busy. I can't do it now.
Yeah.
But I always describe it as being me. I never say now's not a good time for that, right? Or because they don't know how it works, right? If they knew when it's inappropriate to interrupt somebody, then I think they wouldn't do it. But yes, I'll often just say I'm busy. I can't do that right now.
Do you circle back with them? Do you wait for them to come to you to close that loop?
Oh, so for example, if they have a question, I mean, if they have a question,
if they say, why is that? And you say, I'm busy right now. Is it their responsibility to come back to you if to get you at a time when you're not busy? Or do you always come back to them and say, all right, now I'm not busy and I can answer that question?
Oh, no. I mean, if I put them off, I almost always seek them out.
Okay. Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah.
That feels like closing the loop, and like I really heard you and I'm coming back to you to tend to the question that you had.
Yeah. I mean, if they have a question, I almost always, it's more like they want to like interrupt me and like tell me about something, or show me something they're watching on YouTube. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't have time for that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Questions are gold. Anytime a kid has like a question about the world or what we're doing, it's hard to be too busy for that.
Aaron, is there any part of you that, like, after you wrote the book and you put it out and now you've gotten so your platform has expanded, do people come to you with nuances and arguments and questions and stories and anecdotal whatevers that do refine your thinking, where you're like, I'll pivot a little bit on that, or I used to go all the way left and now I'm a little towards the middle, or I've adjusted my thinking because of the healthy dialogue that has occurred?
I don't want to sound irrational, but in large part, basically, no. The answer, the simple answer would be no. I've lots of people have come to me with objections, obviously, but usually the objection is built on a fundamental confusion about what's going on, and it's my failure to really address that confusion. And so I've been reevaluating how to address the confusion. But I think maybe I'll try to set it up for you. The fundamental confusion is that what we should allow our kids to do is a flawed question. And there's lots of examples of discovering that questions are flawed over history, right? Like the theory of evolution. The question used to be, how do species acquire the characteristics that they have to deal, how does a giraffe acquire the characteristic of a long neck? And then, Darwin realized actually that, Darwin didn't know about genes, but once you add the gene theory, Darwin realized that the giraffe produces the variation internally. Some giraffes have longer necks, some have shorter necks, and the longer necked ones survive. So a characteristic of a long neck did not come in from the outside. The giraffe did not acquire that characteristic from the environment. It produced that characteristic internally, and the giraffes that produced the tall neck characteristic flourished and outcompeted the other ones. So that's the same kind of thing that's happening with parenting. The question of what do we allow and disallow for our kids is the wrong question. And the better question, which is very different, is when I have a conflict with my kid, how do I think up a solution that accounts for my kid's preferences and my preferences in a way that we're both happy with? Right? There's a completely different kind of a question. Like, just forget allow and disallow. And so on X, a lot of people come up to me and say, well, when should a kid be allowed to drink alcohol? Or what if a kid was going to shoot heroin? Or what if they were going to do this? Would you disallow this? Would you disallow that? Over and over. And I'm like, it's not about allowing and disallowing. It's if my kid was encountering heroin, that's a whole, what's going on here, right? Like, this is a very specific context dependent thing. And how do I solve the problems of, a kid being exposed to drugs or a kid who's running out in the street, right? Well, what's happening in this context?
Yeah, that's what one of our guys asked. Would Aaron let his 14-year-old get a face tattoo?
That's a great one. So again, all right, would I allow it or disallow it, right?
Yeah.
It's the wrong framing. Instead, if a 14-year-old wants a face tattoo, what's the reason, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
What is happening in their mind?
Mm-hmm.
And
what happens if you lean in? Ultimately, do you put your foot down though? Like, let's say you lean in. Let's say you understand what's going on in their mind and you really understand. But at the end of the day, they're like, I definitely want one. At some point, does Aaron just say, no, that's irreversible. You're not coming back from that. I'm a no to that. Or even the heroin argument. Like, at some point, you're like, why heroin? What's their interest? Where did they hear about heroin? And you do all the digging, but at the end of the day, they make a healthy case for it. And you're like, but no. Is that, I guess what people point out is that at some point, Aaron's going to say no, right?
So, yes, at some point, I often say no.
Yeah.
The question is, there's two ways of saying no. One way of saying no is like, no, I'm going to grab you out of the street and pull you onto the sidewalk. That's different than saying the rule is no running in the street. So I never say the rule is no running in the street. Instead, if there's limited time here, I'm just acting and I am going to make forcing moves. And I do force my kids on occasion. Yes. Right. I've ran out of options. I don't have time to problem solve. I don't have time to figure out a solution here. I'm just going to grab you. Right. I don't have time. If you're about to shoot heroin, I'm going to stop you. Right. Yep. If you're about to, drink a liquor or something, I'm going to stop you. But I'm not going to say there's no drinking alcohol.
Yeah.
Right. I'm going to say, what is going on? And I'm not even going to say it like,
that's the point. Yeah.
I'm going to understand
the spirit of what I get from this. What I keep coming back to, even though my brain wants to go, all right, let me play out this radical scenario and that radical scenario. It does become, maybe it's fun to play it out to like, okay, well, let's do the absurd scenario. But really what I'm getting from you constantly keep coming back to what I agree with and what I like and what I respect. And I'm so grateful that you're having these conversations and being willing to engage in these podcasts and talk about this, is you're talking about helping somebody to learn about themselves and the world and have productive dialogue, and the benefit of natural consequences, being autonomous, sovereign beings. I can't argue with that point.
Right.
Like, if the goal is to raise sovereign beings, I'm on Team Aaron.
We gotta raise them on reality. Yeah. And are you going to be their guide as they engage with reality, or are you going to be a policeman who's telling them not to? Because at the end of the day, they're going to beat you, right?
Yes.
They got time is on their side, and if they're hiding something from you, you're never going to know, right? You'll never know what they're hiding from you. So you can't just put your foot down and say there will be no. Well, face tattoos is a good example because, but they could run away and do a face tattoo. But looking at stuff on the internet, doing drugs, right? They're going to have private moments away from you where they're going to have this opportunity, and they can hide it from you, and you just won't know. And your rule doesn't mean shit, because if they don't do it, they don't do it. If you're their adversary, they are totally capable of thinking of a way around it.
Yep.
So that's the reality. It's not like it's magical thinking to think that my rules will be the way that it is.
Yeah.
It's just
for sure.
Right. So what's one of the confusions is to kind of give rules a pass, like as if they work. They definitely don't work often, and they often backfire, and they degrade your relationship. But let me get to the face tattoo. The other thing about the face tattoo is what is going on in a kid's mind who's going to get a face tattoo.
Exactly.
Right? Like at 14, something is wrong. Something is deeply wrong. And you want to know about what's wrong. And I would bet that something's quite wrong with your relationship with them. And you don't want to be in a place where that relationship is degraded so much that they don't care what their appearance is.
Yeah. I don't fully agree with that. The idea of like, it's wrong, because I hear myself in a yes, and I'm not an absolute person, because I'm like, certain cultures around the world.
No, I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm saying something has gone wrong. I would say if a kid wants to get a face tattoo, a permanent face tattoo, and they understand.
I get what you're saying. I don't fully agree with it. Because I think that at some point, like, that's not for me to say. And I just say that because I get in our world right now, like where we live and our constraints of this culture. But if I'm thinking big enough, and I'm thinking even like the jungles in the Amazon, you get what I'm saying. Like I'm only saying a yes and situation here, where I don't like saying definitively across the board it's wrong, or something's wrong, or something's wrong.
So notice how far off, right? We're like, once we follow these what if things out, they get more and more eccentric and kind of crazy and off the.
I'm going to reel in my eccentric examples.
But I would say reeling into like heroin or in Western culture, a face tattoo is generally. For a kid, the likelihood that something has gone awry here is big, and you don't want to be in that.
I agree with it overall. Yeah. If my 14-year-old comes to me, I'm like, something's off. Yeah.
Right. We got to reasonable. And if I just say like, you're not doing that, and that's it, it's like, that's just not how I'd approach it. You just like.
I want to get to something like super practical. Thanks for reeling me back in, Aaron. I appreciate that. But it's literally what comes up with the guys, because you do not, I think what the rejection is, definitive statements like that's bad or something's wrong. And the nature is, I want to fight against that because that doesn't feel totally congruent, right? If I have an example, I'm like, hey, something may be wrong. And maybe it's just language and maybe it's just words, but it's something that I think comes up for our guys in the community. But going back to the point of like, if we're trying to understand the spirit, I think this is where war happens and people fight over stupid stuff. They're actually probably saying the same thing. At the end of the day, they're like, we basically agree. We're just bickering over details. I want to ask you something, Aaron, about sugar. So when I was listening to you and reading your book and all this stuff, I was like, what what am I trying to see as a structure? Because again, you get caught in the weeds, you get into the nuances, you debate for days. I'm like, big ones are screens, sugar are like two of the big ones.
Oh yeah.
And the potential long-term effect. Because I keep battling with, hey, choose your own adventure, and I know better. And I think that what this came down to for me was probably how we think about the impact of something. So as an example, right, I found this study from the University of California. And again, let me just throw the disclaimer out that any study can be absolute bullshit, sponsored by the person that wants to prove a point. It's hard to quote studies because I think half of them are bullshit, right? I really do. But I don't want to discount every study that's ever been done either, right? And I want it to be a thinking partner. So I say that because when I'm quoting this study, I'm not saying that I've like checked this over and would bet my life this study is accurate, but I'm using it to have a discussion with you. So it says, right, that an additional hour of screen time for tweens increased the risk of suicidal behavior by 9% over 2 years, right? And so I hear something like that, and I think to myself, and I've had conversations on the podcast with people who've lost their kids to suicide, and they do deep research and they start understanding, and they then advocate for that. What happens online, what we get exposed to, are the dopamine, all the arguments behind it, right? Affects how a child develops emotionally. And so I think there's something there intuitively for me, Aaron, that says I can get behind that without believing. Just in my body, I can get behind that. Because when I leave Ocean to make his own choices, he actually doesn't stop. I know the argument of like the bag of lollipops and eventually you'll stop eating them because you get sick. Tony Robbins used to tell the story of my mom gave me a 6-pack of beer. Maybe I drank it all. I got sick. I never drank alcohol again. Like there's some good argument there of getting sick and not doing it. But I've also watched Ocean binge watch YouTube to the point where he doesn't get sick of it. He craves more of it. And he's a total lunatic after he does it.
All right. There's a lot there.
Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to really unpack the context of that.
Let me flip it around and look at the harms of the rules. And I think this was, I wanted to open the book with this, but I opened the book with talk about food and screens and sleep instead. But the 4 harms of rules, right? What's the alternative? Your kid wants to eat sugar, that wants to binge on YouTube. What's the alternative, right? The alternative is that you have to present yourself as an adversary, right? I'm setting limits on how much you can watch. And now that means that, I, your dad, am somebody that you have a reason to try to deceive, to try to hide the iPad and lie to me and, watch this thing on your own time. I am a judge. I am a surveillance person, right? I'm always looking out to see what you're doing. I am policing you. That is a fundamental cause of mistrust. You can't trust somebody who is your gatekeeper and your adversary. And so, that study is not asking what happens to the parent-child relationship when they're taking the screen away from them, right? That's not factored in. And so, yes, we're concerned about our child's brain development. And yes, we're concerned about dopamine, although I can make fun of dopamine. But we're also concerned about how much our kids trust us. And that tends to be left out of the discussion. But you cannot preserve trust and be an adversary. And then flipping that around again, if you do have trust, my kids are very open when I say like, "Ugh, that looks terrible." Like, "Ugh, that show. What about this show? What about doing this instead?" Right? They're so open to my suggestions because there's never a hidden agenda within them. I am the guy who's always trying to have fun, and my suggestions, they can always opt out of them. I always take no for an answer, which means that they take my suggestions seriously. And I think that's the ultimate lifeline to safety, is to have a trusted, knowledgeable person always on hand. So I wouldn't do anything to degrade that. including yank an iPad out of their hands because I have to save them from YouTube. But it's not just the parent-child relationship. It's also their relationship with themselves. Because if you're telling them that their own desire to watch YouTube is bad, then that means that they need somebody to police them. And once they grow up and go to college, they have to police themselves. And that is essentially self-doubt and insecurity. It's saying that my desires can get me into trouble. The food that I want to eat, the stuff I want to watch TV. Ooh, I have a potential to be a bad boy, and I need to.
I do need to police myself.
Yeah, but
I need to delete Instagram from my phone occasionally.
No.
Tell me why? Because it works for me when I don't put alcohol in the house. When I delete Instagram from my phone, I understand the law of proximity. I'm likely to pick up my running shoes when they're in front of me, and I'm likely to eat sugar when it's in my cupboard. Like, I just don't want to put sugar in my cupboard because I'm more likely to grab it when it's there.
So that's I wouldn't call that policing. I would say, yeah, if I have chips available, I'll eat the whole bag of chips. I'm not going to buy the chips. The policing is to say that, like, Instagram is bad for me, and I need to delete it from my phone. I guess that is the same kind of argument, isn't it? So within yourself, you have conflicting ideas in the same way that your ideas conflict with your kids. And the way to resolve conflicts with ideas is to find out what each idea is about and create some third option that accounts for those things.
Yeah. I like the third option principle.
Yeah, the third option principle is huge. And so, what is so bad about Instagram? That's a big part of it. Like, what is so terrible about it? We don't have to get in that conversation here, but
yeah, I know. I don't want to travel down that rabbit hole.
Like, it is. There's lots of good criticisms to fear of social media, and so explore those criticisms. And then, is there a way to do Instagram that doesn't violate the other preferences that you have? Right? Do
you think you're not worried about some of these things because you don't have addictive tendencies? Like, for a parent out there who actually is like a super addict on shit, maybe they're a little more concerned about their kids. But maybe for Aaron, maybe you don't maybe you don't have a problem with YouTube, you don't have a problem with sugar, you don't have a problem with these things. So you don't think that your kids will have a problem with it. Is that possible?
I'm on X all the time.
Yeah.
Constantly. Like, I'm checking constantly. But I love it. I'm not upset about it. There was a period where I deleted it and didn't want that. And I was convinced by the Tristan Harris argument that all this stuff is poisoning our brains. And I've come 180 degrees on that. And there's certain things I love. And my outlook on life is to get more of the stuff that I love.
Can't argue with that.
Yeah.
Can't argue with that.
It's about developing your preferences and your tastes and trusting yourself and not warring with yourself. And what happens is you graduate to more and more interesting things.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, what I really want to do is I want to make sure I got time to talk to John today, and then maybe write about that, and then, talk to somebody tomorrow. And
how are you feeling about that decision now? Are you okay?
It's terrific.
Okay, good. Hey, how old are your kids now? Tell me, you got 5 kids, right?
Yeah. 7, 5, 4, 1, and 1.
Okay. How do you handle the porn situation? Do you put blockers on the devices? Do you let them stumble upon it? Like, what constraint, rule, boundary, like, how would you treat that?
So I would want to know if they were watching porn, right? So since there's no, I could see all the stuff that they're watching because they're, they have no reason to hide anything from me. So whatever YouTube content they're seeing, I'm seeing also.
Right.
And so if they became interested in porn, that would be a red flag, and I would want to know why they're interested in porn. I would shut it off. I wouldn't let them like explore and see what happens, but I wouldn't say there's no porn, right? It's not simply instituting the rule. It is finding out what's going on.
The optionality of that. You put a pop-up blocker, you limit adult websites, would you take that route versus the conversation that's like, hey, I advise you not to Google this, but you could do what you want. You're a sovereign being, but would you just remove the option?
No, I mean, it depends on how old they are, but the younger they are,
You're coming up
right?
on that age, it feels like to me.
Yeah, I don't think so. They just have no interest in this.
My
So there's a
kid
couple.
was at school at 8, and his older brother, his best friend, so he was 8.
That's what you got to watch out for.
Right.
Okay.
So my 8-year-old's best friend's older brother, who was 13, introduced porn to his 8-year-old friend, came to school and said, "Hey, we got to go home. The mission is everybody in our club is going to Google porn and
So
come back
do
and
you
report
want
what you find."
So do you want to know about that or do you not?
Yeah.
You sure as shit want to know about that.
Yeah.
Right. And so the first thing is like, oh, right. So my kid, hopefully, we'll see what happens, but would come home and want to tell me about this new adventure.
Yeah. Right.
to look at porn. I'm like, what? And what's really going on in that scenario is playing with the fun older kid and dabbling in this forbidden zone. That is what life is, right? Like that's being in the world, and we're going to solve that, and we're going to address that in the beginning. And I'm not going to flip sides and suddenly say, "Oh, I'm the adversary here.
Yep.
Let's make this real interesting." Right? I'm going to start saying, no porn, and I don't know what I would do, but there are many other options, and and I think that it's just a crucial role of being the trusted person in that.
Yeah. That's what it keeps coming back to, man. That's the anchor. Right?
Well, I can say like, look, I don't think this is a good idea. Let me tell you why I think this is a bad idea. I mean, anything that I'm afraid of, my kids are afraid of. There's nothing that whenever I'm afraid of something, they're like, "Oh God, Dad's afraid of that. I'm not going near that." And I almost never express disapproval. And if I'm saying like, "Ooh, this is," I would expect that by the age where they are beginning to be interested in porn, they would be interested in my thoughts about it. And by the time that they're interested in it, it's a fact of life, right? Like porn is available on the web, and teenagers are, you're going to be existing in this land of abundant available porn. How are we going to deal with that, right? Is it going to say like you can't do it ever, and when I'm not here, you have to police yourself and never let yourself do it? Like that's crazy.
I had a conversation with my son about it, and I was like, "Hey, look, man, let's talk about this." And I said, "Here's the thing. I know I can't police the whole thing. I can put blockers at home, but dude, you've got friends with phones, friends with computers. Like I'm not going to, like, if you are interested." I just had this whole conversation with him about some things you can't unsee. And I was literally like, you can see, right? Like some things you can't unsee. Just please know that it's not all worth looking at. I've seen some things where I'm like, wish I never saw that, and I had this conversation with him, a really honest conversation with him about it. Because I even said, like, I can't tell you no drugs because you're going to do what you're going to do, but I can tell you, dangers. I want you to be aware, and I want you to actually come to me. Like, if you wanted to do drugs, I'd want you to come to me and be like, "I want to do this drug. Is there a way that you can help me get it and do it safely?" I'd rather have that conversation than him go buy it in a back alley and be a fentanyl statistic. Like, truly.
So one thing you can't do is you can't say, "Listen to me. You can come to me with anything," and have them say, "Wow, okay, I'm opening the trust door wide open and forgetting about all the times that you took my iPad away and did this and did that." The sugar,
an interesting point.
Right. And it's not even the sugar. It's not just about the sugar. It's like, oh, you took the sugar away from me. You might take something else away from me.
You're not a safe person for my truth.
Yeah. You can't. I mean, I love my parents. My parents did an amazing job. I remember the speech, like, "You can tell us about anything." And I remember what I was thinking at that moment was like, well, I can think of things right now that I'm sure shit not done.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And what did I do? I put on what face did I put onto them? Did I say, "You know what? Yeah. Right. I didn't say that." I said, "Oh, yes, thank you so much."
Thank you so much. That's so kind. Of course, I'll come to you. Yeah.
Of course I will. Like, let's get this conversation over with, because I'm not. Yeah. Right. It was like, serious time like that.
Dude, I even went to my parents as an adult, Aaron, and I was like, "Would you like to know some of the things that I?" And they go, "I don't want to know. I don't want to know." Even as an adult, they're like, "Don't tell me." Like, it's so fascinating. I would want my kids to tell me. I'd want to know it all.
Right. And so the seeds of that begin in, 2, 3, 4 years old.
Yeah. Yeah. So true.
Well, they don't think that you have it. This is the other thing that happens is that when you're enforcing rules, there's an alternate persona. There's like rule world and then real world, and the kids give you fake, compliant, obedient kid face, and then they have their real world, and I don't want that gap. One of the most powerful things that happened was my daughter wasn't into first grade. She didn't want to do first grade, and I said, let's just go visit. We'll visit for 20 minutes. So we go for 20 minutes, and it was all her friends. And anyway, without getting into the details, everybody was like, oh, they wanted her to come back. She had been there for kindergarten, and everybody was so shocked that she didn't want to do first grade. And they said, you're going to come back tomorrow. And it was all this sing-songy voice. You're coming tomorrow. We'll see you tomorrow, right? And we had to go, through the office, and all the office staff were doing it. And she was just like shut down, sucking her thumb. And she was like, yeah, I'll come tomorrow. And we step outside, and she said, Daddy, I said yes, but I wanted to say no. And I said to her, you don't ever have to tell me what you think I want to hear. Like, that is it. Like, there it is. Like, the double standard is there. And that is life for so many kids. It's this, I'll tell you what you want to hear, and they don't even realize it. It's just second nature.
Yeah.
And I don't want to have that gap.
Hey, do you have time for a couple more questions?
Yeah.
I want to talk about sugar, and in particular food. I want to get into this. I probably should have led with it. Feels like such a big one. But let me ask you an emotional question, man. What really gets to you? Where do you get really upset? Where do you cry? What is the most sensitive, vulnerable, confusing, or whatever part of parenting for you? Like, a lot of this it feels heady. It feels intellectual. It feels like a strategy. But I want to know your heart. I want to know, like, if I crawled into Aaron's heart, what's there that's the most emotional part of this all for you? And that might be where you're confused, and it might be where you're inspired. I'm just wondering, like, the feeling behind all of this for you.
I don't have a good answer for that. The thing that gets me the most emotional in a sad or nostalgic way is just like my kids' suffering is incredibly, it's unbearable. Yeah. Like when they're sick, or they're unhappy, or when they're upset with me, that is really, really hard. But I don't know. I think of I think of my relationship with my parents all the time, and it was very good. But I think of my childhood, and you get this kind of nostalgia. And one of the big things that struck me was, how much you do for your kids when they're 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, and they have no idea. And right, they're like annoyed that you're not doing more, right? And you're like, look, I'm sacrificing so much for you. I'm bending over backwards for you, and you're just too young to get it. And then by the time we grow up, we never turn around and say to our parents, or maybe we do, but I never really said to my parents in the way that I would like to say to them that I thank them for all, the vulnerability and the sacrifice. And that's why I dedicated the book to my parents. And I just said, thank you, because I just want to say that, and I have to figure out a way to do it.
Aaron, did you also have suffering as a child that wasn't tended to?
Certainly not out of the range of normal. I think everybody has some suffering as a kid that's not addressed or not attended to. But my parents were very, very focused on me. It was a very close-knit family. We had a lot of time together, and if I was ever suffering in any outsized way, they would obviously know it. There was no way I could hide it from them, and it would be like thing number one for them immediately. So I would say basically, in absolute terms, yes, there were sufferings that I had that I bore alone, but it was they were very tiny and short-lived, and I had a very, very privileged, fortunate upbringing, and that was not a feature of it.
Man, thank you so much for sharing that. I can really feel your heart on that, Aaron. That's really cool. What an honoring of your parents and a recognition of how they showed up for you as a kid, man. I think that's
it was a big. It's something I said in the preface is that I was worried, like writing this book. I mean, they see themselves as excellent parents, as they should, right? And they were very, very keen on getting parenting right. And I feel bad that I'm, in a large sense, criticizing a lot of what they did.
Right.
And it's hard, it's some potential wounded pride there. But my folks were really, I try to say like it's not about, they were such a huge step forward from their parents. And I don't think, before our parents' generation came around, people didn't even think about parenting well. It's a very new thing. And so they made enormous progress from where they came from. And I'm trying to say that, they would want me to try to make progress from what they did.
Well, dude, this is the question that comes up all the time is you're an amazing man. Look at how great you are, right? And then, wouldn't you want to do the very thing that your parents did? Now you're experimenting with something different, not sure if you're going to get the result you want.
Right. No. And that's the importance of the outcomes. Like the other thing about treating kids, like imagine if somebody treated you for your whole 20s, right? Someone close to you in your family, and everything that you did in your 20s, every interaction that you had with them, let's say it's your brother or sister or parents during your 20s, it was always them trying to maximize how you did in your 30s, right? Everything was qualified. Like, how do we get Aaron to do well in his 30s? That would be so annoying, right? That would be just so bothersome. You'd want to just a genuine, authentic interact. What about me now in my 20s? And that's one way I think about this. It's like, it's a mistake to take a person and say the way that I'm going to interact with you is in terms of how you turn out decades down the road. Like that is
dude, I'm going to make a prediction here, Aaron, because I know some people are going to be like, well, let's talk to Aaron in 10 years and see what he thinks then. He's got kids under 7. Let's see what he thinks. Fair. Here's what I want to say, man. I'm always trying to look for the through line. I mean, we're coming up on 500 episodes where I interview dads. I've got a 15-year-old and a 10-year-old. I have a community of 300 men. We talk fatherhood constantly. And here's what I think, man. I think that your philosophies, your points, your principles are amazing to discuss. They're sound. They carry such richness. But dude, you know what I think is the best part of you and what you're talking about in your book and all this is you love your children. You are engaged as a dad, and you are trying to help them become who they were born to be. And at the end of the day, I go, dude, there's 1,000 ways to get to your destination potentially. But if your approach is rooted in love and engagement and trying to see a child, because that's what we want, to be seen, heard, and valued. There's lots of ways to get there. But I think that's the principle that I keep hearing from you, man. I want to get, so as eccentric as I was getting with my examples of like face tattoos in the Amazon, I just want you to know that I see what I think is the root of what makes you awesome. Well, thanks. To me, that's my reflection.
Well, thank you. And I would say that, I criticize conventional parenting a lot, but so many people have that, right? They want to make things better. And that's really, I think, the only essential ingredient, and people already have that. Yes. You want the best for your kids. And that is a problem-solving attitude, right? And, all the rules and the constraints and the restrictions and everything, you could just ask yourself, could these be better?
Yeah.
Right. And they always could be better. And what I would say is the best version of all those rules and restrictions is something where you don't even need the rule and the restriction, that the kid takes on voluntarily. And so can you adjust what you're doing to the point where the compulsory nature of it disappears? That gets back to this thing of constraints and the Jocko Willink point, right? You want to figure out how to make these constraints appealing, right? Right. The game of chess is a set of constraints. And so, what is appealing about chess to the point where the kid wants to play voluntarily, right? What's appealing about brushing your teeth to the point where the kid wants to do it voluntarily, right? And can you figure out what that is, right? And that's, kids want their breath to smell good. They want to taste tasty toothpaste. They want their own fun little toothbrush. They want to play games with mom and dad around, nighttime routines and right. Like, this is all possible. And are you on a path to getting there that is so much more fun than just, these are the rules and I'm here to enforce them and let's get through this.
Yeah, dude, in all my exploration of my life, freedom was at the highest value. I mean, it's why I chose every career path I've been on. I was a professional speaker for a decade. I've been an entrepreneur since I'm 18 years old. I did not go to college. Nice. I'm freedom is at the top, freedom to choose.
Good.
And and so I think, but and again, this is why this is fascinating, because I am the biggest fan of what we're talking about here, right? Nice. And there are some things that I'm like, all right, Aaron, I'm going to go toe to toe with you on this. I got to get to sugar real quick because I got to ask you this question. And I'm going to make this very personal than trying to script this question beautifully. Okay. This is a very personal question. I have a belief, and my wife shares this with me. We are super health conscious. I would put us in a very high category of paying attention to food. And one of our beliefs is that food coloring is bad. Now, I'm not going to debate it with you, right? Because I'm not qualified to debate it. But personally, I've landed on, and my son will pick up candy in a store and he'll turn it over and he'll be like, nope, red 40, not going to do it. Because we have a belief in that. So again, I could quote studies, right? This study, that study. I think they're about to ban it, right? I'm a big fan of that. I'm actually super grateful that that's happening. I would be much more of a fan of if it comes from the earth, if it's a natural food dye, more natural, less chemical, right?
Sure.
I believe that if I just let my kid go into a convenience store and buy candy that has food coloring in it, as an example, and I can use other examples too. I could flip it over and be like, it has canola oil, and we're not a fan of canola oil or seed oils, right? Like I could do that argument. I could also make an argument that is creating a long-term consequence, that diabetes is real. Forever chemicals are real. Cooking in Teflon pans is real. Putting plastic clothes against your skin can be very real in my world. Again, not the expert, not here to debate it, but for me, that feels severe in its consequence. So I can't let my son make those decisions because he hasn't done the research on forever chemicals. And I've had a bunch of the guys on the show, like the person who made the film about, the documentary about, I think it's called Stink or something like that. And it was about these forever chemicals. And on and on and on. I'm not going to keep making the point, but it's like, how do you process that or feel about that?
We're fallible. That's a central part of this philosophy, that anything can be wrong. And you've got to be open to the idea that any idea about anything, including nutrition and health and forever chemicals and dyes, could be wrong. And that's a big part of, any rule that you impose on your kid could be wrong. And, you would be terrible to force them to adhere to a rule that is mistaken. And so you should be very, very, very rigorous in criticizing anything you would want to force on somebody else. And so that's what I would ask you. Like, have you looked at the arguments that dyes aren't so bad, or the arguments that forever chemicals aren't quite such a big deal? Or maybe, documentarians are fiction writers. There's documentaries, there's health scares and alarmism about everything, right? There's absolutely everything. Someone can give you the argument about why this is a nightmare. And that would be my broad suggestion, is that for anything that is a bugaboo or something that you would force on somebody else, you really have to interrogate and see if that could be, what are the arguments against this?
Who would you trust in that space with something that's as serious as that? I mean, I think that would you, like, as an example, would you agree that like childhood obesity is an epidemic right now? Like the amount of kids who have diabetes today versus 20 years ago?
Sure.
And then when you hear that, like, what do you attribute that to? And is that a problem for you? Are you like, man, there is something that's happening that's unhealthy, that obviously these kids can't make their own decisions?
Ooh.
Oh, sorry.
It's all good.
Let me clarify
there, right?
that. Let me clarify that. Where there is a consequence that's so severe. Like if I let a child drink all the soda they want,
right.
And we can look at these indigenous cultures where we've put Coke stands in, right?
Yeah.
And we can look at what's happening to their diet, and we look at like cancer didn't exist there prior to when we introduced the Western diet.
Oh boy. I hope you don't mind my mocking tone. I could
this is why I wanted to talk with you.
Yeah,
like I welcome it, because what I'm trying to do is I want to teach men how to have honest conversations with each other where they can disagree.
So let's do this. Let's
respectfully
do this.
And lovingly.
Yes, absolutely. So obesity is a problem. There are lots of problems, right? Like problems exist in a world of freedom. Absolutely. They also exist in a world of rules. There's no rule to make sure a kid doesn't become obese, right? There's no, right? If you force them to eat a certain way, once they leave the household, now what do? Right? Their hands have been tied and now they're released into abundance and have to do this on their own. Maybe you set them up with certain hangups and, right? Like you can create a scenario where you're making them more vulnerable to obesity and temptation and tasty foods and simple sugars and simple carbohydrates, right? The trouble with a human is that a human is different than a robot or a computer or a dog or anything else, that you can't program to turn out and behave a certain way. It doesn't work that way. They create the reasons in their own minds, and you cannot control the process of how they create their own reasons, right? So when you say you will only eat this, you don't know what the understanding of this is in their own mind. You could tell them about forever chemicals and all this stuff, but they might decide, just like I was saying, my friend who grew up with a messy dad and became a detail freak, right? Are they going to become the opposite of what you are, or in alignment with what you are, or something in between? There's no way of knowing that. And what you get is you get an unknown outcome, and you get a degraded relationship along the way.
It's like if somebody tried to tell me not to drive fast when I was 17, like show me the statistics, like I don't know that it would have worked for me. I have so many examples of this in my own life.
What would have worked is a badass who said, you know what, right? Who leveled with you, who you trusted, who knew about cars and speed and whatnot, right? Not somebody who was unengaged with life. Right, but somebody who lived that world.
You know what did work? By the way, I crashed a car in my neighborhood around this very tight turn. Terrible crash, right? It was like could have been terrible. And my dad said to me, he said, the only reason I'm not having a conversation with you while you're in a jail cell, like, is because somebody wasn't walking on the other side of the street when you went out of control and you killed them. And dude, that sentence, and by the way, he didn't tell me don't drive fast. He didn't say, if you ever do this again, I won't love you. He just said, man, it breaks my heart to know that the only reason we're not sitting across from each other from a jail cell is because you were lucky enough that somebody wasn't walking across the street on the other side and you killed them. And that I had chills. I never forgot the conversation, and it changed my life.
I'm getting chills right now. Exactly. There's something so powerful about that. And it's an instant. How long did that take? Right?
Yeah.
It wasn't about forcing something repetitively over and over. I'm going to exercise every day, and force myself to develop this habit and all that kind of stuff. Bullshit. Right? It was one nugget of knowledge that landed perfectly, delivered perfectly at the right time, and in an instant. Right? Your behavior changed because your reason in your mind
right.
suddenly shifted. Like the old reason was out the door, and hot shot, badass, speeder John was like, actually, I'm going to replace that with, I could have killed somebody and I just wasn't thinking about that. And it would be devastating to my dad and devastating to me. Like it all comes together.
Yeah.
Right. And I want to be the person that can at any moment with my kids, like drop a bomb like that and have it land like that. That is the magic. And that is what I'm building or trying to build from day one. Like I want to be the guy who you are always open to.
Yeah. Aaron, I want to tell you this, man. I really respect you for the choices that you're making, for how you're showing up, for the fact that you're leaning into this, being willing to talk with me, being willing to have this conversation. I really do. I appreciate your certainty, your confidence, and the love that you clearly have for your children. It's so inspiring to me. So thank you. And I don't think we need to agree on all the points. It's not my goal is to like sync up on all the points and, hey man, we're never gonna, I'm yes to Aaron on everything. I don't want any man to do that. I want us to choose our own path. I want us to have good dialogue, which I feel like we did today. And I really want to thank you for that. So I appreciate you letting me like get eccentric, poke around, throw out some ridiculous examples if they were. But thank you for how we chatted about this today. I really appreciate you.
Thank you so much. It's a great honor. And this was just so fun.
Yeah, very cool, man. I hope people read the book. I hope this sparks great conversation in our community. And I hope it really helps men to lean in and whatever path they choose, they do with love and certainty, full engagement, and continued curiosity, I hope as well. Is there anything you want to say, man, to wrap this conversation up? You can have the final words.
Sure. Just that, I like engaging with people on X, and I answer DMs and stuff, and just released the audiobook 2 days ago. So it's now available on Audible, and the book there's a free PDF on the website. So, if you want to read it, search it, and dive in, it's thesovereignchild.com. And we'll be posting some of the other podcasts and stuff, but this has been just such a great conversation. And I really appreciate that, having me on and sharing me with your audience.
Yeah, so good. And how about this? If you had to put a bow on it and you had to say, guys, if there's one thing I want you to get, it's this. And maybe it's what you said earlier on in the show, but it's like, remind us, headline style or short prose style, right? Like if there's one reminder, what is it that you hope that we get?
The one reminder is there's always another way. There's always a better version of any rule or restriction. Every restriction can be improved. You don't even have to think about eliminating it. Every single restriction can be delivered in a slightly different way that the kid prefers, that gets more at the heart of what you're after. And I think always being open to searching for that, and try never to close the door and say, this is just how it is.
Really appreciate you, Aaron. Thanks for being on the show, brother.
Thank you so much.
I hope we cross paths again soon.
Wonderful. Take care, John.
Thanks for listening today, fellas. If you got value from this episode, I ask that you take 1 second right now and you share this with another dad in your life that you respect, that you know is committed to becoming a better man, family man, and businessman. And on that note, I want to honor you for choosing growth. Your family will thank you years from now for all the effort that you're putting in to learn the strategies so you can show up more fully for them today. Take care.